You have watched the incompetent rise to power. You have seen the confident fool promoted over the brilliant analyst. You have wondered why society rewards arrogance over intelligence. Niccolò Machiavelli spent his life studying this exact phenomenon, and what he discovered will make you question everything you thought you knew about success, intelligence, and power. Today, I am going to show you the dark truth about why stupid people run the world, and by the end of this video, you will understand the invisible game being played all around you. A game where intelligence is often a disadvantage and ignorance can be the ultimate weapon. Machiavelli was not just a political theorist. He was a psychologist who cracked the code of human behavior 500 years before modern science caught up. He observed the courts of Renaissance Italy. He watched princes rise and fall. He documented who succeeded and who failed. And the pattern he discovered was disturbing. The good people lost. The intelligent people hesitated. And the ruthless, often impetuous people conquered everything. Let me be clear. Machiavelli did not call them stupid. He called them impetuous, decisive, willing to act without hesitation. But to the analytical mind, they look stupid because they act without the burden of moral hesitation, without the paralysis of overthinking, without the weakness of caring what happens to others. These people appear stupid to those who value ethics and analysis, but they possess a dark competence that Machiavelli recognized as brutally effective in the real world. He called this quality virtù, excellence, prowess, the ability to act decisively when others freeze, and understanding this distinction is the key to everything that follows. Here is the first uncomfortable truth Machiavelli documented across dozens of political courts. Good people have breaks. Moral people pause before they act. They consider consequences. They worry about fairness. They hesitate when a decision might hurt someone. This hesitation, this consideration, this conscience creates a fatal delay in every situation where action matters. Let me show you a composite scenario synthesized from multiple organizational behavior studies conducted over the past 2 decades. This pattern appears so consistently across different industries and cultures that researchers consider it a fundamental dynamic of competitive environments. 2 managers compete for the same executive position. Manager A is brilliant, ethical, and cautious. She analyzes every decision from multiple angles. She worries about the impact on her team. She refuses to take credit for others' work. She hesitates to make promises she cannot guarantee. Manager B is confident, ruthless, and decisive. He does not waste time on moral considerations. He takes credit freely. He makes bold promises without caring if he can deliver. He acts immediately while others are still thinking. Who gets promoted? Modern organizational psychology has studied this exact scenario thousands of times across Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and non-profit organizations. The research is consistent and disturbing. Confidence beats competence. Decisive action beats careful analysis. Bold promises beat honest limitations. Manager B gets the promotion almost every time, not because he is smarter, because he is unburdened by the moral considerations that slow Manager A down. This exact dynamic is what Machiavelli observed in every court, every government, every organization he studied across Renaissance Italy. The person willing to act without moral hesitation has an immediate advantage over the person who pauses to consider ethics. The pattern held true, whether the position was Duke of Florence or captain of a mercenary company. This is what he meant when he wrote that a prince must learn how not to be good. Not that goodness is weakness, but that goodness creates operational delays that ruthless people exploit with devastating efficiency. Machiavelli famously wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. He was not celebrating foolishness. He was observing that in the realm of power, hesitation kills. The person who acts first even without perfect information, wins. The person who waits for certainty loses. But this moral advantage is only half the equation. Here is where it gets psychologically fascinating. Intelligent people suffer from what modern psychology calls analysis paralysis. The smarter you are, the more variables you can see. The more variables you see, the more potential outcomes you imagine. The more outcomes you imagine, the harder it becomes to choose decisively. You see the problem, right? Intelligence creates doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. Hesitation creates vulnerability. This cognitive burden is precisely what separates the intelligent from the successful in Machiavelli's framework. Meanwhile, the Dunning-Kruger effect explains why incompetent people act with total confidence. Research by David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University demonstrated that people with low ability systematically overestimate their competence. They lack the metacognitive ability to recognize their own limitations. This sounds like a disadvantage, but Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago what neuroscience now confirms. In many situations, this ignorance is actually a superpower. What we modern people call stupidity, Machiavelli recognized as a competitive advantage. The incompetent person does not see the risks that terrify the intelligent person. They do not anticipate the problems that paralyze the analytical mind. They just act, and in a world that rewards action over contemplation, they often win. Think about your own workplace right now. The person who gets ahead is rarely the smartest person in the room. It is the person who speaks first in meetings, the person who volunteers for high-visibility projects without worrying if they can actually deliver. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The alchemist's path gives you drills, young-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. The person who networks aggressively without the self-consciousness that holds others back. They are not necessarily smart. They are just unburdened by the intelligence that makes you hesitate. Machiavelli documented this dynamic in Renaissance courts with clinical precision. The advisor who pointed out problems got ignored or punished. The advisor who promised easy solutions got promoted. Even when the easy solutions failed, the confident advisor simply blamed others and moved on to the next promise. Sound familiar? This pattern has not changed in 500 years, which brings us to something even more disturbing. This brings us to Machiavelli's second major insight, the trap of flatterers. And this is where the system becomes self-reinforcing in the most disturbing way possible. When someone rises to power through confidence rather than competence, they face an immediate problem. They are surrounded by people who might be smarter than them. This creates psychological insecurity, and insecure leaders respond in predictable ways that Machiavelli observed repeatedly. They surround themselves with yes men, with flatterers, with people who pose no intellectual threat. Machiavelli devoted an entire chapter of The Prince to this phenomenon. Chapter 23, How to Avoid Flatterers. He observed this pattern in court after court across the Italian city-states. A prince who gained power through ruthlessness rather than wisdom would surround himself with advisors who never challenged him, not because he consciously recognized his own limitations, but because competent advisors made him uncomfortable in ways he could not articulate. This discomfort is what modern organizational research now calls threatened egotism. Research on threatened egotism shows that insecure leaders view competence as a threat. This creates what business theorists call the Bozo Explosion. One incompetent leader hires another, who hires another, until the entire organization is staffed with non-threatening mediocrity. Meanwhile, truly competent leaders hire people smarter than themselves. They are secure enough to value capability over ego protection. But these leaders are rare, and they are not the ones Machiavelli was warning you about. Here is where it gets terrifying. This insecurity creates a cascade effect that Machiavelli watched destroy entire governments. The incompetent leader hires incompetent advisors. Those advisors hire even less competent subordinates. Each layer of management becomes progressively less capable. Within a few years, an entire organization can be staffed by people selected primarily for their non-threatening mediocrity. There is an old adage in Silicon Valley: A players hire A players, B players hire C players. This is not modern wisdom. This is Machiavelli's observation from 500 years ago. Machiavelli watched this happen in government after government. A strong prince dies. His son inherits the throne. The son is insecure about his own abilities. He surrounds himself with yes-men who never challenge him. Those yes-men fill the bureaucracy with people who never challenge them. Within a generation, the entire state apparatus is run by the confidently incompetent, the intelligent people, the competent people, the people who actually understand how things work, get systematically filtered out. Not through conspiracy, through the simple psychological mechanism of insecure people avoiding anyone who makes them feel inadequate. This filtering process operates in your organization right now. Look at how many layers of management separate the person doing actual work from the person making strategic decisions. Now ask yourself, at each layer, were people selected for competence or for non-threatening agreeability? The trap of flatterers is not ancient history. It is operating all around you right now. Every meeting you attend, every promotion you witness, every decision that makes you wonder how anyone that incompetent got that much power. But Machiavelli discovered something even more disturbing than the accidental incompetence of insecure leaders. Sometimes stupidity is not real. Sometimes it is a mask. And this is where we enter truly dark psychological territory that most people never recognize. Weaponized incompetence. The strategic use of appearing stupid to avoid responsibility, escape accountability, and survive in dangerous environments. Machiavelli explicitly advised this tactic in his discourses on Livy. He pointed to the Roman hero Junius Brutus, who survived a tyrant by pretending to be an idiot. Brutus played the fool so convincingly that the tyrant Tarquin dismissed him as harmless. And when the moment came, Brutus led the revolution that overthrew the tyrant. Machiavelli wrote that Brutus simulated madness, faked stupidity, used apparent incompetence as a survival strategy. In dangerous times, he wrote, "It is better to appear foolish than to appear threatening." The competent person attracts dangerous attention. The fool gets ignored or dismissed, and being ignored in a dangerous court can save your life. Let me show you a narrative illustration that represents a pattern documented across multiple organizations by researchers studying workplace survival strategies in politically toxic environments. A bureaucrat works in a corrupt organization. He sees illegal activity everywhere. He understands exactly how the system works and who benefits. If he appears intelligent and observant, he becomes dangerous to the people profiting from corruption. They will find a way to remove him. So he plays dumb. He acts confused by simple concepts. He asks obvious questions. He appears to miss what is happening right in front of him. The corrupt officials relax around him. He becomes invisible, and he survives, while competent people who show their understanding get systematically eliminated. This scenario combines elements from whistleblower research and organizational silence studies. Research on organizational silence and strategic incompetence shows that employees in toxic work environments routinely hide their abilities to avoid becoming targets. Study in the Academy of Management Journal found that competent employees in politically charged environments often engage in what researchers call competence concealment to reduce interpersonal threat. They see everything. They understand everything. They act like they see and understand nothing. Machiavelli elevated this survival strategy to an art form in his advice throughout his works. He taught that in a dangerous court, appearing slightly foolish protects you from the machinations of more powerful players. They do not fear you. They do not plot against you. You survive by appearing non-threatening. This weaponization of incompetence serves another function that Machiavelli understood intuitively: plausible deniability. If you never appear to understand how things work, you can never be held responsible when things go wrong. This strategic function is everywhere in modern organizations. The manager who consistently plays confused about basic processes. They cannot be held accountable for failures because they never claim to understand in the first place. Meanwhile, the competent person who demonstrates understanding gets assigned all the responsibility. Within a few months, the smart person is drowning in work and blame. The fool is relaxing with no accountability. Machiavelli understood that in many environments, intelligence is a liability and strategic stupidity is survival. But he also understood that some people take this game to an entirely different level. Now we arrive at Machiavelli's most sophisticated psychological framework: the lion and the fox. This is where everything comes together into a complete system of power dynamics. In chapter 18 of The Prince, Machiavelli famously described two types of winners: the lion, who represents strength and force, and the fox, who represents cunning and deception. A prince, he wrote, must know how to be both: the lion to frighten wolves, the fox to recognize traps. But there is a third player Machiavelli warned about, the one who always loses. He called them the unarmed prophets, the people who see the truth, who speak the truth, but lack the force to impose it, or the cunning to protect themselves. In modern terms, we might call them the philosophers, the analysts, the people too smart for their own good. Most people assume the lion wins. Raw power conquers all. But Machiavelli observed something different across every conflict he analyzed. The fox defeats the lion almost every time. Here is why this matters for you. The lion is predictable. Strength announces itself. Force follows certain patterns. The lion fights directly, relying on power and courage. This makes the lion easy to manipulate for anyone. Paying attention, the fox studies the lion. The fox learns what the lion values. The fox then constructs situations where the lion's strength becomes a weakness. The fox never fights directly. The fox creates traps that the powerful lion walks into. In modern terms, think about office politics. The direct, honest, hard-working person is the lion. They believe performance matters. They trust in their abilities. They expect their strength to be recognized. The manipulative political operator is the fox. They study the lion. They understand that the lion values fairness and hard work. So the fox constructs situations where the lion's honesty becomes a vulnerability. The lion refuses to take credit for others' work. The fox takes credit for everyone's work, including the lion's. The lion relies on their proven abilities. The fox manipulates perceptions. The lion expects merit to be rewarded. The fox knows that perception matters more than reality. Within a year, the fox has been promoted twice. The lion is still working hard and wondering why strength does not translate to advancement. This dynamic plays out in every organization you have ever worked in. But here is what most people miss about Machiavelli's framework. What about the unarmed prophet? The truly intelligent person who sees through the fox's games. This is where Machiavelli's psychology gets darkest and where you need to pay the closest attention. The unarmed prophet loses to the fox for a completely different reason than the lion loses. The prophet sees too much. They understand the games being played. They recognize the manipulation, and this knowledge paralyzes them. They cannot play along with the obvious charade. They cannot pretend not to see what is clearly happening. They cannot participate in the collective delusion, so they withdraw, or they speak truth, or they try to warn others, and the system destroys them. Machiavelli wrote extensively about unarmed prophets who failed. Savonarola in Florence. Prophets who had vision and truth, but lacked either the force of the lion or the cunning of the fox. They saw clearly, they spoke honestly, and they died or were exiled for it. Research on whistleblowing and organizational retaliation confirms this pattern Machiavelli identified centuries ago. Studies show that employees who point out unethical behavior, even when they are completely correct, face systematic retaliation. They get labeled as troublemakers, poor team players, disloyal. Meanwhile, the people engaged in the unethical behavior often get promoted. Not despite their corruption, but because the skills required for successful manipulation translate well to political advancement. The unarmed prophet who sees everything clearly ends up isolated, frustrated, and eventually pushed out, all while watching less intelligent but more politically skilled people rise to positions they are completely unqualified for. This is the danger of being too smart that Machiavelli documented 500 years ago, and it operates with the same brutal efficiency today. Society hates the person who sees everything clearly. We claim to value truth. We say we want honest feedback. We pretend to reward clear thinking. But when someone actually points out uncomfortable realities, we turn on them viciously. Here is a composite example synthesized from organizational behavior research on truth-telling and retaliation patterns. This scenario combines elements from multiple documented cases across different industries, where clear-sighted analysis led to systematic punishment rather than reward. An analyst in a failing company recognizes that the current strategy is fundamentally flawed. She has data, she has clear evidence, she prepares a presentation showing exactly where the problems are and how to fix them. She presents to leadership. And something strange happens. Instead of gratitude for identifying problems early, she faces hostility. Leaders become defensive. They question her motives. They suggest she is being negative. Within weeks, she is marginalized. Within months, she is pushed out. The company continues with the failing strategy, and when it eventually collapses, the same leaders who rejected her analysis blame external factors beyond their control. This pattern repeats in organizations, governments, and social systems constantly. The person who sees clearly becomes the target, not because they are wrong, because they threaten the comfortable delusions that everyone else has agreed to maintain. Psychologically, this relates to what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance. When confronted with evidence that contradicts our beliefs or self-image, we experience psychological discomfort. The easiest way to resolve this discomfort is to attack the source of the contradictory evidence rather than change our beliefs. If you are a leader who believes you are competent, and someone presents evidence of your incompetence, you have two choices. Accept the evidence and revise your self-image. Or attack the person presenting the evidence and maintain your self-image. Most people choose the second option, every single time. This is why Machiavelli wrote that telling princes the truth is dangerous. The person who points out that the emperor has no clothes does not get rewarded for honesty. They get punished for disrupting the shared fiction. Modern research on organizational silence confirms exactly what Machiavelli observed in Italian courts. Studies show that employees learn quickly what truths are acceptable to speak and what truths must remain unspoken. The smart employee adapts to these unspoken rules. The too smart employee refuses to participate in the collective delusion and pays the price. There is a psychological cost to seeing everything clearly while everyone around you plays pretend. Cognitive isolation, moral injury, the exhaustion of maintaining your grip on reality while surrounded by people who seem to have agreed on a completely different version of events. Therapists who work with whistleblowers and organizational outcasts describe a consistent pattern. These individuals suffer not from mental illness, but from what some researchers call moral clarity in an immoral environment. They see what is happening clearly, they refuse to pretend otherwise, and the social cost destroys them. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you know. And living in a world run by people confidently doing the wrong things, while everyone pretends not to notice, creates a special kind of psychological hell. Machiavelli understood this from personal experience. He saw clearly. He documented honestly. He told the Medici family uncomfortable truths about power. And he spent years in exile, tortured, dismissed by the very people he was trying to help. His own life became proof of the danger he was warning others about. So what do you do now? You understand the game. You see why stupid people run the world. You recognize the dynamics at play. What is your move? This is where most educational content fails you. They explain the problem brilliantly. Then they offer nothing useful for actually navigating reality. I am not going to do that. Machiavelli's actual advice, stripped of academic interpretation, is ruthlessly practical. He never said the world should be fair. He said the world is what it is. Your job is not to complain about the rain. Your job is to build an umbrella. Here is the strategy for navigating a world run by confident incompetence. 5 specific tactics Machiavelli would recognize immediately. First, understand the rules of the actual game being played, not the game you wish was being played. Not the game that should be played, the game that is actually happening around you right now. In most organizations, the official game is meritocracy. Work hard, perform well, get promoted. But that is not the real game. The real game is perception management, political alliances, and strategic visibility. The person who succeeds is not the person who does the best work. It is the person who ensures the right. People know about their work, who builds relationships with decision makers, who positions themselves visibly on successful projects and invisibly on failing ones. This is not corruption. This is just reality. And Machiavelli's point is that refusing to play the real game while insisting the official game should matter is a choice. A choice that leads to your own irrelevance. Second, practice strategic silence. You have seen from the examples that speaking uncomfortable truths rarely benefits the truth teller. Learn to recognize what truths are safe to speak and what truths must remain private knowledge. This does not mean lying. It means understanding that not every truth needs to be voiced. Not every problem needs to be pointed out. Not every incompetent decision needs to be challenged. Save your credibility for moments that actually matter. For situations where speaking up might change outcomes rather than just marking you as a troublemaker. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote The Prince as a private gift, not a public manifesto. He knew which truths could be spoken openly and which had to be whispered in private. Third, master selective visibility. Remember the trap of flatterers? The cascade of incompetent people hiring yes men? You cannot stop this dynamic, but you can choose where you position yourself in relation to it. Be visible enough to get credit for your work, but not so visible that you threaten insecure superiors. Demonstrate competence without triggering the defensive responses of people less capable than you. This is delicate. You are essentially managing the egos of people who should not be in charge. But again, Machiavelli's question is not what should be, it is what is. And what is often requires competent people to manage the insecurities of the incompetent people above them. Fourth, build alternative power bases. If you are intelligent enough to see the games being played, you are intelligent enough to create options for yourself. Do not depend entirely on one organization, one relationship, one path to success. Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized the importance of options. The person with nowhere else to go must tolerate anything. The person with alternatives can negotiate from strength or walk away from toxic situations. This might mean developing skills that translate across industries, building a professional network beyond your current organization, creating financial reserves that let you say no, cultivating reputation and credibility that exist independently of any single employer. Fifth, choose your battles with surgical precision. Remember the unarmed prophet who sees everything but cannot win? That does not have to be you. You can see clearly and still pick your battles strategically. Not every injustice needs your intervention. Not every stupid decision needs your opposition. Not every incompetent person needs to be challenged. Save your political capital for issues that genuinely matter, for moments where your intervention might actually change outcomes, for battles you have some realistic chance of winning. Machiavelli was not advocating passivity. He was advocating strategic action versus reactive emotional responses. The smart player chooses which games to play. The reactive player fights every fight and exhausts themselves. And finally, protect your psychological health. This is the part Machiavelli never addressed directly, but his own life demonstrates clearly. Seeing reality clearly, while surrounded by people who refuse to see, takes a toll. You need people in your life who also see clearly, who can validate your perceptions, who can confirm that you are not crazy for noticing what you notice. These relationships are psychologically essential. Find your people, the others who understand the game, who see through the performance, who recognize the dynamics at play. You do not need many, but you need some. Without this, the cognitive isolation will break you, and the incompetent people will have won, not by defeating you, but by making you doubt your own perceptions. So here is the final truth. Machiavelli understood 500 years before modern psychology caught up. The world does not reward virtue. It does not reward intelligence. It does not reward fairness or hard work or honest analysis. The world rewards strategic action, managed perceptions, and ruthless focus on actual rather than official rules. You can complain about this. You can insist it should be different. You can exhaust yourself fighting against fundamental human nature. Or you can accept reality and learn to navigate it effectively. Machiavelli chose the second path, not because he liked what he saw. His writings make clear he found human nature disappointing and courts disgusting, but because he understood that wishing reality was different is not a strategy. The stupid people run the world not because they are actually stupid, but because they are unburdened by the moral considerations, analytical paralysis, and social consciousness that slows smart people down. They act while you think. They promise while you calculate. They move forward while you consider ethics. This gives them an advantage, not a fair advantage, not a deserved advantage, but an advantage nonetheless. You now understand the game. You see why confidence beats competence, why political skill trumps analytical ability, why the person willing to act without moral hesitation often defeats the person who pauses to consider consequences. The question is, what you will do with this knowledge. Will you withdraw in disgust? Will you exhaust yourself fighting against human nature? Or will you learn to play the actual game with enough skill to protect yourself and advance your interests? Machiavelli cannot make that choice for you. I cannot make it for you. But now you see clearly. And seeing clearly is the first step toward acting strategically. The incompetent people running things are not going to suddenly become competent. The systems rewarding confidence over capability are not going to magically reform themselves. The dynamics that elevate fools and marginalize the intelligent are not going away. You can rage against this, or you can adapt to it. The choice is yours. But at least now you understand why the world works the way it does, and understanding is power if you choose to use it. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, You'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.